This is Tanya Lynn with the Sistership Circle podcast. From spirituality, sexuality, and sisterhood to business, relationships, contribution, and creativity, the Sistership Circle podcast introduces a new model of feminine leadership where women get real and vulnerable about it all. Tune in for authentic advice that will empower you to be bold, beautiful, and brilliant as your true self. Welcome to the Sistership Circle podcast. I'm Tanya Lynn, and I am so excited for an amazing conversation with another mompreneur. And she is just absolutely incredible. And I have been just watching her and following her. And I'm in a group with her on Facebook with a bunch of other amazing mamas. So I'm excited to dive in deeper with her today and just talk about everything about business and sisterhood and motherhood. So this is just going to be a really juicy conversation. So let me tell you a little bit about Jeannine Yoder, who is a New York Times featured business and goddess lifestyle coach for coaches, Broadway starlet, and founder of Mentor Masterclass, the Sisterhood Mastermind, and the Captivate Retreat. Jay leads new life coaches to becoming embodied thought leaders in Mentor Masterclass, an all-in personalized life coach training program to help women learn from the best and launch their business with the support of celebrity mentors and a soul-powered sisterhood. That sounds amazing. So welcome, Jay. I'm so excited to have you here and just to connect deeper in the sisterhood. I mean, that's what this is all about. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Tanya. And hello, everyone. This is, I've been really looking forward to this.
Yes. So I just want to start with, how did you get to where you are today, leading the Mentor Masterclass? And then I'd love to hear more about that. I mean, I just think that's a great place to start because that's what I've always seen out there. And so I know that that's like your signature thing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, let's start from the main point.
It's quite a journey. It's a funny question. Like it really brings up a lot. So I'm thinking of where to begin with it. Today, especially, I'm so in the heart of the newness of being a mom and relating to my business. So it's interesting to reflect on this question from a completely different point in my life too. It feels so vulnerable to have another love outside of my business, which my business was my baby for so long. And before my business became my baby, my dream was my baby, like just nurturing my dream of who I wanted to become. And it's so interesting now to be in a place where I am so in love with something else outside of my work and how that shifts my perspective on my work and even my journey up to this point, which I'll just mention that because it feels really raw and real in this moment. I think probably very relevant for just our connection through meeting through a mama's group and this time in our life that we share pretty closely intertwined with each other. So, I mean, how did I get to where I am with Mentor Masterclass? I think that I was inspired by darkness in my life, in my upbringing, to look for the light and to ask deeper questions about myself. So both of my parents, anyone who's followed me or heard me before, touched around my website, know that my parents were both drug addicts. And very early on when they started to get clean, around when I turned around 8 years old is when they started to go into recovery and seeking recovery. And that's when my mom went into a woman's home and group to heal. And my dad really went to meetings and he had sole custody of my sister and I, and we would go to meetings with him. And so I really grew up in these NA meetings and listening to people tell their story, most of them rock bottom stories, struggling with addiction. And they were all coming together in community to use these tools to better their lives and heal their challenge, which for them was addiction. And I think, looking at my parents and their struggle and the reality of our life and then being immersed in these meetings, I think that's really where the journey to Mentor Masterclass began. I mean, that young. And so the rest of it was just the willingness to ask a question in my life. What do I really want to do with my life? And what am I really capable of? Which came from watching my parents hide from life through addiction and drugs. Um, and then seeing that life was hard and wondering, am I capable of creating something better, even though I come from this and I'm surrounded by this? Because it wasn't only my parents, it was many of my mom's siblings struggled with addiction. You know, my dad's whole family history is just a lot of darkness. So it really, thankfully, just I had an inner voice in me that was seeking the light. And so that had me pursue acting as a career because it was what I loved. And so I thought I want to do work that I love. And so I loved musical theater, which what could be more lighthearted than singing and dancing your way through stories. And then that really led me to personal development because in order to be an actress living in New York City, trying to deal with the adversity and the rejection, I really had to learn self-love and also just like skills to be optimistic and hopeful and devoted. So I started reading a lot of self-help books. And then when I started to go into that path of like the self-help and wellness world, I started to discover that I had some innate gifts and talents and interest in personal development work, which stemmed back, I think, to those early ages. And so just by following that question, what is the purpose of my life, is a big thing that came up in those early stages of personal development. And as I started to really ask that question and do deep reflection within myself and in my current career as an actress on Broadway, I started to discover that my purpose was more than just a role or a career. And I found this innate passion and ability and interest and gift and like divine orchestration in all areas of my life that really pointed to using tools and resources to go after what you want in your life and to work through any challenge that you might have, and that it's possible. And so I kind of had that happen in my acting career, which was amazing. And then started to learn that coaching was something, that becoming a life coach was actually a career. And I thought this career is much more in line with what I want to do. And as I started coaching, I realized that my gift for coaching was actually teaching the tools and techniques of a coach. And then I was featured in a New York Times article that was really about being young and successful. The title of the article was, "Should a Life Coach Have a Life First?" And I went through a lot of adversity responding to the response of that article of people who were challenging whether I was old enough or capable to be a life coach for other people, which increased first I had a moment of I should just give up on everything because who am I? And then I had a moment of I am divinity and I deserve to do what I love and I am capable. And then I became an advocate of women who feel that they desire this career path at any age, that they should do it. And I started creating a life coach training program that had everything that I felt was missing in other programs, so that women who felt that they had a gift to be there for people, who were empathic, who were listeners, who were passionate about living our best life and discovering what that is uniquely, that they could really learn how to become a life coach and the business side of that. And that's what Mentor Masterclass is. It's all about a community of women, a small group of women who I nurture through learning to become a master life coach and then walking that path with them, because ultimately I believe any woman who decides to become a life coach is asking to walk the deepest path of inner discovery and personal work and expansion in your life. And while that all sounds awesome and beautiful, it's also really challenging work, and I don't believe we're meant to do it alone. So I create sisterhood support around that in a year-long journey where I can continue to do that work in my own life and then support women in doing that in theirs. So that's the long of the short, of the short of the long. I'm not sure which one.
Well, thank you. I mean, I absolutely love hearing people's stories, and I think it's, there's just so many little gems and nuggets that I can pull out of this. I mean, the first being that I can completely relate, and I think this is a main point that I want to pull out here, is there are all these little dots in our journey, you know, and Steve Jobs actually did his famous Stanford commencement speech about this, like connecting the dots in your life. And you just beautifully did that in your story of it starts back to when you were a kid at these NA meetings. And I can relate in my own way to that, where, you know, I've always been the tribe builder and bringing community together. And I was witnessing my parents doing that as a small child as well, where every single holiday we had like 50 people at my house, you know, and it was like we were a hub of a community gathering, you know, all growing up. So I've always been that way. And so it's just so cool hearing that from you, of, you know, here you are in these kind of, in a way, personal development, transformational meetings your whole life. I mean, it's just, it's amazing. And
I love hearing that about you too. It also makes me reflect on, well, my first thought actually was like the pressure of parenting. Because the first thought I thought was like, oh my goodness, what we do are those connecting dots for our children. Like it's one piece of it that's introduced at this time. But then immediately I kind of release the pressure, because it brings me back to like, I really believe I chose my parents because that was my soul path. And I chose that unique set of circumstances to guide me to where I am. So it's also cool to think about that from the parenting perspective, and that I can do no wrong because she has chosen this path. And it's, you know, I really believe in that. And hearing your story, I just thought like, what a cool upbringing, what a beautiful, like, experience. It's just so unique to have that be your family's way of doing things, having people around, and how you're integrating that now into your mission and path.
Yeah. And I mean, for us both as mamas, I mean, that's, I think, the biggest thing. And anyone listening who is a mother, you constantly have guilt coming up of, am I doing this the right way? And, you know, trying to be this perfect, ideal mother. But in fact, it's the flaws and it's the imperfection that our babies pulled in, you know, they called that in for a reason. And so I'm so glad that you just brought that up, because I think that's a really important piece for us as women, to give ourselves permission to be imperfect and to get that we're doing the best we can. And it's all good. You know, like our babies are fine. You know? Like you're an amazing person, right? And you grew up in addiction, like,
right.
You know what I mean? It's just, it's amazing. So it's just incredible. Like and that also just goes to show, like, it doesn't matter what our circumstances are, right? At the end of the day, it's what we do with those circumstances and who we are in the face of those circumstances. So great.
And it's hard to believe that when you're in the circumstances too, you know, it's, I think that's one of the things I'm reveling on too, just today, and thinking about really from a place of reverence. I had moments just all the time throughout my life where it was like, where I would say to myself, like, my challenges are going to make it hard for me to be successful, or because this is where I started, or I don't have these resources or this support system available to me. It's my circumstances that keep me from the success or the life that I want. And that was honestly the deepest shift I had in my personal development journey, where I really had to take 100% responsibility and say, that's a bunch of bullshit, and continuing to believe that and play a bit of the victim role, which is actually funny to think of myself in, because I don't really resonate with that. And it's something I resisted in my parents a lot. But truly, there were moments in my life where I did want to use those excuses as the reason. And that shift to taking 100% responsibility and saying, no matter my circumstances, I have a choice and I can do something about it, was the catalyst for the change. And I think as a mom, it's pretty easy to fall back into using the immensity of the role of being a mom and a parent and what it takes, and just the emotional capacity that it takes to do anything outside of nurturing this tiny human, can become an excuse in the same way. And so it's like we're called back into another form of radical self-responsibility and self-mothering and self-love that it takes to be able to be a mother and do other great work in the world.
Oh, amen. I mean, I was like, if there's one reason why I'm on the phone with you doing this interview today, it is exactly that, because that has totally been my experience, where I feel like a whole new set of circumstances are coming up now. And it's been in like the last couple months. It's almost like, my baby has transitioned to toddler and is now in a new phase. And so there's a whole new set of circumstances that come up with that. And I have been being victim to them, and I've been conscious of this. And,
right.
When over the last few weeks, it's just been a constant, just taking responsibility and really having some awareness around, where I'm falling back into that pattern. And for me, it's just a new level of up-leveling. It's a new, okay, so now we're at the next stage as a mother. Okay, now how do I adjust and how do I take responsibility? So I'm so glad you said that. I mean, it's so true. And I see mothers use that all the time, where I don't have the time. I can't make it I can't make it on time, or whatever it is. I mean, it's just, I can't work. I can't do this. I can't do that. Right. I have this child. And we really, truly do have power over our circumstances.
And it just takes a lot more devotion. I want to honor what we are capable of as women, because, and it's okay to have time periods of victim and tantrum and messiness, and I can't. And my hope is that we all can pull through that and find the resources to help us to move into what are the resources that are available to me then? What are the options here? Because I get that it does feel impossible. It does feel like you can't ever get somewhere on time, or like you don't have the time, or you just can't do things. And you can. If you want to, and also permission to get real with what you want too. And if you don't want to be on time, then just be honest and tell everyone, I'm never going to be on time because I'm a mom. And will it be willing to take the results of that? I'm trying to think of like, what is the opportunity cost of that? Like there will be a cost for you shifting your story into that. Oh my gosh, I could go off on a million tangents about this, I feel like.
But it just feels so relevant for me right now. And I think for so many women, and it doesn't matter if you're a mother or not, but what I have found is that this has been the ultimate circumstance for me. And
when my business was my baby, I used the same excuses that it was my business that kept me too busy to make a phone call, or that kept me in a longer meeting. I couldn't be on time. And before that, it was, working toward my dream and all the things that I had to do to launch it. So it's, I don't want to compare my real baby daughter to my business, but the energy of it can be slightly similar.
And how you do one thing is how you do everything, right? So it's just a new layer of it coming up. Yeah. And this is a good thread back into your original story and the piece that I was really picking up about, when you were being told that you were too young to be a life coach. I mean, there it is again, and how so many of us face that adversity and the big block. And it's like, well, maybe that's the truth, right? Like I have evidence of this, like everyone is confirming that this is the way it is. And so, well, maybe I shouldn't be, right? And then you made a choice and you realized that that was not the truth. That was part of the illusion. And you stepped into the truth and used it as fuel to then support other women in overcoming their circumstances and just really owning their power no matter what age they are. So I love that. And you used it as fuel. I really want to point that piece out of like, I have an opportunity to shift not only for myself, but for others in the same way. So just brilliant. I don't know if you want to respond to that.
It's the same thing I'm resistant to in my life right now, in that whatever is my deepest fear, the the belief that I have that's limiting, the deepest fear that's lurking beneath the surface in my subconscious mind. I don't know about you ladies, and I don't wish this on you. If your experience is different, then amazing. But I've met a lot of women that this happens to. I am not off the hook in my life. Like, really strong mirrors show up for me that make it unavoidable for me to either live in pain around that fear until I'm able to shift it. So it's become like a non-negotiable practice unless I want to be in a place of suffering, which I would never choose for myself. I call in, my soul seems to call in these very strong reflections so that I can't not hide from it, and I have to face it and heal it. And that's why I'm passionate about coaching tools and techniques, because left to my own resources, like before, now I'm well resourced. I keep like plethora of people and resources all around me because this is the way that my life works, and I need support to get through those times. So that article was one of those times. My deepest inner fear that was hidden was that I'm, this sweet blonde actress coming from Broadway with a high-pitched voice, and no one's going to take me seriously or see my deep wisdom or innate gifts. It's not going to show through. So of course I would manifest this article that ends up on the cover of the Times before I even had my business ready for that kind of exposure or knew what to do with it. Very early stages. Of course, I would have to heal that idea that I'm not capable, that I'm not old enough, that people won't take me seriously. And it's so funny because looking back now, my programs used to be young women around that time. And now Mentor Masterclass is all ages. And actually, most recently this last year that we run it, so I take 50 women every year. This last year, 5 of the women were over 60. And they actually had the opposite fear. One of my clients that I love so much, she said to me in our first call together, I don't know if I can join because I think I'm too old. I think I'm too old that people won't take me seriously. And I'm like, oh my God, that's so funny, because I would have wished to have your wisdom and life experience. And you would think that that is what would support you. And over the year, we really shifted that to that and connected. I healed something really important in that whole situation. And I'm just up against that again. It's the thing I'm most resistant to, the thing that I want to control the most, that life will just throw it in an upheaval. And I have to stare it straight in the mirror and say, what am I going to do with this? Am I going to suffer, or am I going to turn this into strength and power? And so luckily I'm well resourced often so far to be able to make that shift. And motherhood, my God, the word that I hold as a mother is surrender, because everything that I thought that I figured out before this point, everything that I thought in my illusion that I had control over and had figured out and now was secure and safe, has been those things that were the most secure and that I thought I had the most control over are the things that are the weakest at this point and that I can't lean on. So it's such an art of surrender and self-trust and leaning into the support where you can find it really in our human life, and also like universal divine support too, and trust. And holy shit, is that challenging for anyone like me who has thought that control is the way to safety or success.
That has been the story of my year. Just everything that I thought was true falling apart and crumbling this year. I mean, just everything I thought I had healed, whole new layer just rising to the surface. And oh yes. Just wow. I mean, it's like, yeah. And that's, and it goes back to the master, and mastery, the master. We look at these masters always say they're still a student. Like as soon as you think you're enlightened, you're not at all. I mean, and that's the that's kind of the paradox of it, of spirituality and enlightenment and truth. It's just, we think we got it, and then we realize we don't. And really, truly, surrender is the path. That's what I found. So I think many of us are learning that lesson. So thank you for bringing that up.
I wonder too, I love that you share that. I don't know why this analogy came up, but I kind of thought about like celebrities and how they reach this, they're masters in a different sense. It's almost like mastering what we as an American culture think we want: fame and success and ease and, you know, like luxury lifestyles and all the things, which is just kind of brainwashed into us. And then you see so many of them struggle. They have everything. And it's like, it made me think of like the master, like, I'm so grateful to know and to look for those ways that I can become a student, because I think there's something deceiving and disheartening about thinking that you can come to a place in life where everything's just figured out and you have everything that you could ever want, because then what is left? It's like, I heard Joe Rogan say this recently in a comedy special, and I don't remember exactly what he said, but he said like, the universe itself is proof that what it's all about is evolving and growing and changing. And like, that is like what it exists off of. And I think that's us too. And yet we try, I think all of us, I'm curious if this is true for you, Tanya, and people who are listening, you know, like in the back of my mind, there's always this thing that thinks I'm trying to get to that like plateau spot. And yet, as you were sharing, I was like, who would want that spot? Like the reality of that, I think, would be completely different than what we think it would be once we were there. If that's how it did work, if suddenly we were all figured out and healed and perfect and had everything we ever wanted, I think it would be a painful, weird place to be in. So I don't know, just riffing.
Yeah. And what that brought up for me is I just had this conversation where someone was sharing with me, I wish that we weren't making as much money, because when we weren't making as much money, we didn't have as many expenses, and it was actually a lot easier.
Yes.
And now, in order to support this whole lifestyle and the house that we bought and the, you know, and the ridiculous amount of health insurance that we now need to pay for and supporting the employees, we're having to generate all this money.
Yep.
And it's just so interesting how we think, and there's just this, our culture is teaching us, you have to make a certain amount and you have to get to this level of success. And then when you made it, then all your problems are going to go away.
Yeah, I know.
No, it's just a whole new level of problems. It's the same.
I just did my finances in this way with my bookkeeper, and I had a moment of that, because I remember the word six figure was like,
yes,
I was like, oh my God, that's the dream. If I could just make six figures in my life, I would have like hit peak success. And for me, success happened fairly rapidly once I hit my purpose. Like once I went into coaching, I had worked so hard and really missed the mark for so long in my life. And I guess I was pretty young when I did it, but it felt like lifetimes getting there. But where was I going with that? Okay. So thinking like six figures would change everything. And then just recently, about 4 years into really being in success in my business, was talking to my business manager about my team. And my team alone, just to keep the business running, because I need a support team now being a mom, is $90,000 a year. And I was looking at that going, holy fuck. Like I remember that was just, how have I been, I had a moment where it's like, that's what I'm paying my team? Like, oh shit. And I have to make that much just to pay my team now before I even get to profit anything. But I've been doing it and it's happening, but it's like, it's a lot of pressure, and life doesn't feel that different. Like my set of problems, in a way, it's different. Like there's different things around me and different experiences, but yeah, it is this interesting relationship that we have to money and things, and that the inner work has to come from within us. Nothing is going to change with that six-figure number or that dream business. You're going to be working harder. You're going to have deeper work to do within yourself to maintain that. And even when you were sharing that about like who you were referencing, like all the things you have to keep up with when you make more money, there's an upper limit you can put on yourself right there, or then you can say, oh, I have to. But like, what an honor and a gift that I get to pay employees and I have to like really shift my mindset out of fear and not go into a fear business and say, oh shit, my launch has to be triple six figures for me to be successful now this year. It can't just be $50,000 that I bring in. I need to bring in this much money. How do we constantly shift ourselves out of a place of fear around things and into a place of love and abundance? Because it can happen at any stage. And that's what I think people who have those dreams and haven't hit them yet think that those don't exist for people once they hit a certain stage.
Oh, this is such a great conversation, and it truly is. I mean, it's always so fitting because your work is this master class, right? And really mastery over something. And here we are talking exactly about that it's not about all these external circumstances, and it comes down to the inner work. Mm-hmm. And that's why I love this word, embodied thought leaders, mm-hmm. that you say in your bio, and that has just been a word that really resonates with me lately, is the word embodiment. Mm-hmm. How do we embody our work, and how do we have this not just be smoke and mirrors, which we see so much of in the industry, but really truly we are walking our walk, which can come down to just simple things like what you said earlier of just to own it. Like if you don't want to be on time, then just own it. Like mm-hmm. that to me is the embodiment piece of you're just saying what you mean. You're being congruent in everything. And that it's not about this level of success or this or that. It's just about congruency mm-hmm. and taking 100% responsibility. Mm-hmm. So do you want to say anything about embodiment? Because I think this is a really hot topic. I know it is with the women at Sistership Circle, because that is such a piece of being an embodied feminine leader. Mm-hmm. So what does embodiment mean to you?
Yeah, when I think of that word, I think of a word I use a lot with my women, sovereignty. I think of what sovereignty means to me is a woman who has her feet upon the ground in centered wholeness, a woman who pulls back her shoulders and thinks, what is in the highest good for all, who sees herself as important and as capable of leading, but takes into consideration her people, and to me, that's what embodiment is. There's a sense of empathy, and that you're able to be aware of the world's needs and the people around you and their needs. But those needs don't come before or at the expense of yourself, because in order to nurture and maintain the immensity of that responsibility, you first have to be coming from a place of centered wholeness. And so I think that's different for everybody, whatever practices you do that help you to become embodied. People use movement, people use food, people use life coaching to work through their head, this stuff in their heads. People use getting out in nature. There's a million different resources for how you can be embodied in your life, but embodiment for me personally is coming back to this space of what does it look like for me to be sovereign and to walk as the queen in my life. And so I have to do that with my partner, with my husband, and make sure that we're maintaining that he's in the king role and I'm in the queen role, and that we respect each other in that way. I have to do that as a mother, and that I create space for myself, that she doesn't become my dictator, that I really am nurtured and self-mothering. It's interesting because I also relate to the sovereign self-mothering. I think is a beautiful way to find embodiment. It's just asking that question of, I am the parent to myself, and what do I need to be taken care of? What do I need in this moment to be whole and complete and to show up? And I think it's a paradigm shift. I think I'm lucky because I've surrounded myself with women who are embracing that. But, when you did say that we live in a world where it's smoke and mirrors, I'm aware that is not the whole of our world, that there are many, particularly women out there, that still don't talk about their messiness, don't put themselves first, run themselves ragged, put themselves last, believe or feel guilt if they have an idea of doing it any other way, fall into the patterns of what history and society would have us think about being a mother or being a business owner. And working those edges is what I think embodiment truly is. It's coming through and saying, what is my vision for the world and for myself? And not finding that vision from outside sources, but from a place of interconnected wholeness that you can find in your intuition and your female body that has so much wisdom, that is an animal. You know, our bodies are an animal with so much wisdom, and we let our mind run the show most of the time. And so it's the merging of that mind and our female animal and our intuition to say, let me create the vision from in here and then create that in my outer world, versus pulling the shoulds from everywhere and anywhere and then trying to conform to that, or just completely taking myself out of the driver's seat and letting those things rule me.
Yes. Yeah, sovereignty. I mean, that is, to me, it's that is embodiment, and I'm so glad that you used her, our archetype of the queen, as a way of just putting the visual to what we mean by embodiment, and it's just so perfect. Let's we've got a little bit more time left, and sisterhood. I mean, that's what we're all about here at Sistership Circle, is just creating that space for women to really truly feel like they belong in part of a worldwide sisterhood. And sisterhood has been such a key piece for you, and you've mentioned that throughout. But anything that you want to share about what sisterhood means to you, or what sisterhood has done to provide support for you, and any wisdom for women who are wounded by sisterhood in the past.
Yeah.
Big thing, and you have been able to create so much nurturing love around you through sisterhood. So I think we'll end on this piece.
Powerful. Yeah. Yeah, so if you're wounded through sisterhood, which I can relate to, I mean, I have a lot of wounding with my mother, so I think it starts there, right? Your first female relationship. And just looking back in high school and, you know, all forms, the thing that I am witnessing now, you know, my first journey into sisterhood was in a held container where there was a mentor, Nisha Moodley, who is really who I learned, or who I first, when I was seeking community and sisterhood, she's the first person I found that was a stand for it in the world. And so I was in this really powerful held container where everybody was up to their very best good in sisterhood and like really doing sisterhood. And the truth is, sisterhood is wounding, I think. And that is what we have to make peace with, is am I willing to navigate wounding without being a lone warrior? And am I trusting the right people to embark on that mission with? And so it doesn't mean that you put up with shit and that you let people hurt you and that you deal with things that are not in the highest good for you in your life. It does mean that sisterhood is not always pretty and roses, because it's going to be a strong reflection for you. Again, another mirror for you of what's up to heal. And I actually think that if you embrace that with the right group of women, like-minded women who understand the depth and the art of that, then you are in for a beautiful and powerful experience. And so the shift for me was who I was choosing sisterhood with, because I had collected a lot of women in my life, my mother and my best friend, before embarking on this journey and really learning what sisterhood was, were just women that would take from me, and I would give a whole lot, and I would challenge myself to be better because of it. But really, I didn't have anyone in my life that was qualified or that I trusted to hold me. And so I had to grow two shifts had to happen. The first one was I had to stop wearing the lone warrior like a badge of honor, because I actually wore that as something that made me feel proud and capable and strong. I would say, I don't have women in my life that know how to support me, but that's okay, because it's my gift. I'm here for everybody else. I want to be the one to give them loving advice. I want to be the one that my mom and my best friend calls when they need someone. And I get off on the fact that they need me and that I can be this power and strength for them. And therefore that means that I'm a strong, powerful woman. And when I'm sad, I'll figure it out on my own and take care of it and work through it. And actually that thing that I thought that I unknowingly was wearing as my badge of strength was my greatest weakness. It was the thing that was keeping me from the next level of success in my life. And when I started to look at that differently, and my first rule in coaching with one of my mentors, Nisha, who's now become a really beautiful soul sister of mine, was never be sad alone. That's your rule. You can't be sad or ever struggle with anything alone. And so I took on that role for a year and really made it kind of my mantra. And I created a new circle of women who were empowered women, who actually women who I looked up to, who I felt maybe had more resources than me or a better way of doing things. And I wore Never Be Sad Alone and Receive Support as my new badge of strength as a woman, and really leaned in to asking for support and stretching a very uncomfortable muscle of how much I was willing to receive or ask for. And I realized I had a really short capacity for receiving and asked for very little. And so I've learned, thank God, before becoming a mother, to ask for support and receive support. And that and then through that, I have learned that sisterhood is not always going to look perfect. And I have to work through those issues and have deeper and higher levels of communication, expand my heart, be willing to look at my, the not so pretty parts of myself that my sisters can reflect to me. And by embracing on that journey together and being that mirror for my sisters too, and having a beautiful set of boundaries and honest authenticity with each other, I think I've been able to grow, and I've brought that to my programs. It's Mentor Masterclass didn't have that before I learned it. And afterward, it's become a core cornerstone of the program. And the amazing thing to witness and experience on the outside is that is the shift for my women in their relationships. I see women who find their great lovers after they have sisterhood. I see women who have their first 6-figure year after they have sisterhood, because it's this thing where if you're standing on a cliff and you're holding hands with 12 other powerful women who have bags full of resources and parachutes and wings and all the things that you would need, you're like, I can do this. No matter what happens, I can do this because I have this circle to come back to. And I think we had that back in the day as women. We lived in communities and in tribes, not behind 4 walls, separated from each other, and we supported each other and we lived as tribes. And I think we're coming back into that. And I think it's the shift that will help women to acknowledge their own innate gifts, work through their biggest and darkest blocks, and create a structures and systems and a tribe that will help us to really heal some of the bigger things in the world, not just in our personal lives, but expand that out to some of the deeper problems that we're facing in culture and in humanity.
Wow. You just touched on so many important pieces of sisterhood. And I love that mantra. I will not do sadness alone. I will not be sad alone. Thank you for that. I mean, that's just such a critical piece that all of us women need to get and to claim for ourselves. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And wrapping up, I'd love for you to share, on the show notes of this page, we have Jeannine's information, so you can click on that to get to her website. But anything you want to share, perhaps, I don't know if you have a gift to offer or something for our ladies who want to dive in deeper with you.
Yeah, there's a tons of gifts on my website, but I think specifically what we have for your ladies is I created a daily ritual, because one of the things I think we need are resources to handle life. And so this daily ritual is actually a bit of a workshop for you to create your unique daily ritual using some really powerful coaching techniques that have changed my life. So if you opt in, it takes you through the first 3 steps of creating this ritual to help you tune into your purpose and some mantras and things to use, but more importantly, to craft into your unique desires and wants. So that is my gift to you guys, to really embrace creating a morning ritual that you can use and start your day with each day. And then the other thing is for women who are thinking about becoming life coach, on mentormasterclass.com, we just put up a new self-discovery funnel. So it's 3 days to go through a self-discovery process, which is really what we talked about today, I feel like. And I've supported with some audio replays of our live class and some free worksheets to help you work through some deeper, more innate self-discovery process around finding your sovereignty and stepping into your own leadership. So if anyone feels uniquely drawn to that, you can just go to mentormasterclass.com and put your name and email there and find those goodies.
Great. Perfect. And so then the daily rituals you would find at what link?
I'll give you a link. I'll send that over to you, Tanya, if you want to share that below. It's got like a weird ending. I'll make a special one for your ladies.
Okay, great. Okay. Perfect. So go ahead and go to the show notes to get that link. And thank you so much, Jay, for being here and just riffing with me. I mean, that's literally what we did. And it was just beautiful, and just all of your wisdom. And thank you for doing the work on yourself.
Thank you for you. Yeah. Thank you all women who are doing the work on themselves.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Thank you everyone for tuning into the podcast today. And we will see you next time for our next amazing guest. Thank you.